Rumor has it some of the hardest working people are born in the month of May. One of these people is James H. Gibson. Gibson served in the armed forces for 3 years before returning home to his family. This hardworking man was born on May 7, 1948. His place of birth was Würzburg, Germany, where he stayed in an orphanage. For about 2 years, James Gibson stayed in the orphanage before his parents adopted him. From there, he and his parents lived in the countryside of Germany for a few years. Harry, Gibson's father, was drafted into the army where he was carrying out a service. Soon, however, his dad was stationed in the United States, so the rest of the family, including James Gibson, moved. It was in the states that Gibson served and now resides. In his current life, James Gibson lives with his wife and 2 cats. The family resides in Wilmsdorf, Pennsylvania. Gibson and his wife Louise have multiple children, however none live with their parents. James H. Gibson is now retired and spends most of his days at home taking care of the house. Gibson attends the Bridge of Hope Church in Wilmsdorf as well. James Gibson is a part of the American Legion and attends meetings with the group. Gibson was very pleased with the way his service went. In his mind, he would not change anything about his service time and was glad he served.
About your time of service, anything how it went.
I thought it went very well. If I had to do all over again, do the same thing.
For Gibson to be a part of the Army, he had to enlist or to be drafted. After his graduation on June 5, 1967, 2 days later, James Gibson took the calling and enlisted into the Army. He chose to enlist so he could not be drafted. When one is drafted, they do not get to make many choices about their service, and he did not want that to happen to him. That is one of the biggest reasons he had for
I
enlisting.
didn't want to be drafted because they tell you where to go. And, I had no control, so I was thinking.
After he made this choice, Gibson headed by train to Fort Jackson for basic training. It was here where he and his comrades learned the basics of war and what fighting tactics to use. However, from the start, James Gibson wanted to be a helicopter pilot instead of a soldier. The bad news was that he was told he was unable to be a pilot, so he changed into signal school.
Okay. That's why I thought, what can I do if I'm going to be drafted? I want to have something to. I said, I'll go into electronics. They had radar.
After his basic training, Gibson headed to Fort Monmouth for signal school, which would teach him everything he would need to know about his upcoming job. He often worked with the TPS-25 and many other computers. This program was a year in length, and then he started his service. From his training, James Gibson moved from Fort Monmouth to Vietnam, where he helped in the Vietnam conflict. However, before landing in Vietnam, he was able to see a small part of Hawaii before having to leave again. When Gibson arrived in Vietnam, he was directed to stay in Ho Chi Minh City, where he would help with the radars. He helped in locating missiles, rockets, and aircrafts. James Gibson was a part of the 25th Infantry in Vietnam, which was a radar group. However, he was not with this group long before he left Vietnam and started service somewhere else. When talking with Gibson, he said that he enjoyed his time in Nam. There were many sad moments, but also exciting times as well. One of the memorable events in his time in Vietnam was during their last week in the country. The area that Gibson and his infantry were staying at was under attack, so they had to get ready very quickly. The area was being bombed, so it was a scary time but memorable in his eyes. After his time in Ho Chi Minh City, he traveled back to the States to work with the 67th Signal Radar Group. When he was with this group, he also helped repair devices and control the radar as well. He went to the fire support bases and helped control the infiltration while a part of this group. Gibson, when needed, would also go to places and set up the TPS-25 radar systems and use them to help. James Gibson set up radar systems to scan an area for the enemy, which was a large part of his job. One of the main reasons he went back into the States was because of his signal experience. Many of the people were drafted and did not have much experience when it came to radar, unlike Gibson. He did not spend much time in the United States as well because he served in Germany. His time in the States was limited to only 1 year before he left for Germany to fulfill his last year of active duty. When James Gibson traveled back to Germany, the place he was born, his job was similar to the job in the 67th Signal Radar.
So, when you were in Germany, then, what was your main job in Germany?
Okay, in Germany, my main job was instrument repair. We had a van, and a lot of these vans, they had like, you could have a deuce and a half, which is a 2.5 ton truck, or you could have a 3/4 ton, a smaller vehicle, and you'd have looked like a box on the back. And inside, it was like a square box unit, but inside, you open it up, you had display panels, you had all the instrumentation, everything. That was your whole unit.
Group. While he was in the country, he worked with an instrument repair. Gibson also worked with radar boxes that would be airlifted and transported where they were needed. When he helped with these boxes, he had to ensure that they ran smoothly and could be moved properly. James Gibson enjoyed his time in Germany and picked the country as his favorite service location. While in Germany, he experienced a lot of interesting events and got to see very unique landmarks. When it came time for James H. Gibson to leave the service, he was happy with how everything went. The main reason Gibson left the service was for his wife Louise. If they had not have met in school, he probably would have stayed in the service. To him, he had a home there and a job he could depend on. When he came back home, the readjustment to civilian life was very difficult for him, especially in school and work. After his time in Germany, he came back to the States and attended college, graduating with 3 different degrees. Pleased with his 3 years of service and his current life, Gibson remembers what life was like in some of the saddest, scariest, and thrilling moments of his life.
I like it. It's necessary. And I can say it now.
So maybe the rumor is true, since James H. Gibson worked relentlessly for 3 years and was born in the month of May. His service will be remembered by both his family and everyone who gains the privilege of hearing his story. The story Gibson has is one true to himself and his values, and every part of that is reflected in his service time. James H. Gibson, an E6 specialist who served in Vietnam, the United States, and Germany for our country, we thank you for your service.